Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a great Friday, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And it looks like the Republicans actually grew as bind overnight, or something happened. With them retaking the House of Representatives, it looks like they've put Joe Biden and his administration on notice, along with Hunter Biden, as well. As we know, the laptop from hell has so many incriminating things on it, where they rushed out before the 2020 election to claim it was Russian disinformation, which, of course, was a lie. All of those intel had to sign a letter. 50 intel agency members or whatever that side of the letter were absolute liars, along with the mainstream media. They knew that that piece of information, if the public were able to see what was actually going on, would have not voted for Joe Biden. And they needed that crucial piece of information not to make it into the hands of everyday Americans. And now we have an opportunity to go ahead and start to investigate not only Joe Biden, not only Hunter Biden, but all of the other departments. And hopefully that is what the Republicans will do moving forward. Since they can't get any bills passed, let's focus on investigating all of these corrupt individuals within the Biden administration. This is probably one of the reasons that Jen Psaki took off as soon as she could. So let's go and dive into what we have here. This is an investigation of Joe Biden. House Republicans announced investigation of Joe Biden and the Biden crime family. Fantastic, right? Republicans announced on Thursday that they will investigate serial liar and crook Joe Biden. Representatives Jamie Comer, the Oversight Committee ranking member, we are releasing a report today that details what we've uncovered. We're also sending letters to the Biden administration officials, Biden family associates, renewing our requests for voluntary production of documents relevant to this investigation. This is an investigation of Joe Biden and why he lied to the American people about knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. That House Republicans had been investigating the Biden crime family since at least as far back as 2020. Republicans controlled the House in the midterm election. So now it is time to investigate these individuals. Reporter asks, what is your message for Republicans that want to investigate your family, in particular your son Hunter's business deal? And Biden says, I think it's almost comedy. You won't think his comedy once he starts having to submit to the subpoenas and everything else along with his family. So we will see where this goes. And I hope we are able to hinder him in this calming state of administrators to stop them in their tracks, and we can hold this nation at gridlock and not allow any more of these insane policy decisions and saying bills that there have been trying to pass to get to the president's desk. This is what we must do. Investigate, because come 2024 it will be time to take out the garbage anyway. Well, there you have it. It's certainly not the news that we were hoping for. But honestly, in the end, it's not exactly surprising now, is it? Did I think that this was going to be the end result, that I think that this was going to happen? Not a chance. Honestly, I thought Kari Lake had this one in the bag on election night. But at the same time, at the back of your mind, you and I both knew very, very well that this was a possibility, that it was a possibility that Democrats just magically outperform the polling data significantly, and Republicans don't get the key victories that they needed. Well, unfortunately, that's what happened. And this, honestly, is the worst defeat of all of them, because Kari Lake is the future. And man, she was on an absolute roll throughout this entire campaign season. And of course, it just adds to the confusion. It just doesn't make any sense that somebody who dominated the entire time, somebody who was leading in the polls by a significant margin of victory, somehow on election day manages to underperform in a supposedly Republican-favored environment. It makes you scratch your head and question what is going on. None of this makes sense. And so, of course, like usual, let's just have a chat as we take in the final results in Arizona. Alright folks, so Katie Hobbs is declared the winner of the gubernatorial election, the gubernatorial race in the state of Arizona, winning so far right now by 18,000 points. All the late earlies and election day ballots dropped over the last couple of days. We were expecting them to break for Kari Lake at around 60%. But instead, they broke around 53, 54, 55% depending on the bench, and I guess it just wasn't enough. Apparently Arizona voters decided that Katie Hobbs was a better pick. And this truly baffles the mind how that is even remotely possible. We're purposely going to avoid any theories. But we're certainly going to focus on why this is a very, very weird result. Indeed. Let's start with the polling data across the board. Kari Lake was dominating. I mean, just take a look at the numbers, leading by 3.5% in the aggregate, and a Fox 10/Insider Advantage poll 3 weeks before the election showed Kari Lake leading by up to 11 points. If somehow Katie Hobbs outperforms the polling data by 5 percentage points historically, from the 2016 to 2020. Election polls underestimate the GOP on average by around 0.5%. Kari Lake in the polling average had a lead of 4%. Therefore, you could conclude that Kari Lake is 4 points ahead based on historical trends. Then Katie Hobbs flips that and wins by 0.8%, meaning she flipped the expected result based on polling data on the historic precedent by 4.8 points. How you know if Katie Hobbs was the spectacular candidate? I don't understand it. But Katie Hobbs ran possibly the worst campaign I have ever witnessed in my life, and we have been covering it and we have been saying it over and over again. First of all, Katie Hobbs is absolutely incoherent. And she showed that publicly during many events many times. So and not only is she incoherent and just not up to the task of governor, but she lacks character charisma. She doesn't even really have a platform other than Kari Lake as an extremist threat. She barely campaigned, and then on top of that, she refused to debate her opponent, and somehow she manages to overperform by 5 points. A thought that comes to mind is, make it make sense, especially when you consider the fact that Katie Hobbs is totally unimpressive. But her opponent Kari Lake not only had character, charisma, energy, a platform, was competent, but was also a total firebrand that the media could not handle. The collective media entity could not handle Kari Lake. So the question is, how could Katie Hobbs even compete against somebody so talented, against a rising GOP superstar? And how was it that Republicans down Ballard overperformed Kari Lake, who was supposed to lead the ticket as the main show, the main ag, carrying the rest of the down ballot Republicans with her? Utterly confusing, especially when you look at the data at large. The GOP in Arizona beat the Democrats in House races by 6%. Republicans took 6 out of 9 House seats and flipped to they took 16 out of 28 state Senate seats. The Republican treasurer candidate outperformed Lake by 5% and Masters by 9%. Yet Katie Hobbs takes governor and Kelly takes senator. An interesting observation by Kyle Becker on Twitter. You know, discrepancies are one thing, but this kind of discrepancy, it's truly baffling. Do we know what's going on here? No. And the answer is, and what makes it even more ridiculous, the only person who knows the answers here is Katie Hobbs, because Katie Hobbs, as acting Secretary of State, was in charge of her own election. I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. Katie Hobbs ran her own election while she was on the ticket for the highest seat in the state of Arizona. And of course, people are saying, well, Brian Kemp did the same thing in 2020. Well, that's not a justification. That doesn't make it right. It's wrong. It's a clear conflict of interest, and she should have immediately recused herself. And it raises even more questions in the minds of GOP voters who are just struggling to grasp the results here. How does it make sense that polling averages that historically underestimates Republican support are now underestimating Democrats in very particular states with very particular laws? Well, of course, as we know, it's about to get real messy. In Arizona, we're now hearing results that Kari Lake is planning a massive lawsuit and investigation. And I'd say with good reason, not only because it's confusing, but because of what happened with tabulators. On the day, it's completely unacceptable, especially considering most of the issues reported happened in Republican counties and Republican districts are tabulators. We're just not working the day of one of the most important elections to decide the fate of the state, what direction it's going to go in. When it comes to its leadership positions, the election system just totally breaks down and places Kari Lake is expected to overperform. How many people left those lines as the election system broke down? The question is, are Republican voters being disenfranchised in the state of Arizona? It's something that absolutely must be investigated. It should not just be let go as, oh, well, you know, stuff happens. Well, why is it that stuff just always happens to Republicans? That's, I think, the question we need to be asking ourselves right now. Whatever is going on in Arizona is a complete and utter disaster. And honestly, if you really think about it, considering the circumstances, it's a total miracle that Kari Lake even performed as admirably as she did, Considering the deck was stacked against her, not only the failures of the state on so many different levels, we'll just leave it at that, but also the GOP pulling funding away from her, and even funding her opponent in the primaries, not to mention Liz Cheney spending $500,000 campaigning for Democrats in the state. Cheney continues to prove herself one of the most despicable human beings, clearly angry and vengeful. Instead of just accepting the results of the Wyoming election, and the fact that people don't want her in the party anymore, instead of just gracefully going away, she decides that she's going to sabotage the most important Republican election ahead of the 2022 midterms. I mean, this whole thing is just frustrating. It makes you angry, it makes you confused. And all I know, one prediction that I could make absolutely 100% accurately is that Arizona is about to get real messy, especially as the GOP grew more powerful in the state Senate and the state House. We'll have to see exactly what happens, and of course, I will keep you guys updated. But for now, the result is that Katie Hobbs is going to be the governor. As crazy as that is and totally unbelievable as that remains to be, Katie Hobbs, the total incompetent who cannot speak and refuse to debate, the twice convicted racist Katie Hobbs. Welcome to 2022. And it seems as though Donald Trump is back. I think a lot of people can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I got for you guys though. Thanks for watching.